Perfect.
All right, so we're going to call the Monday, January 9th Design Council meeting to order. The first order of business today is going to be approval of the minutes from our December 5th meeting. Done reviewing those minutes. Do we have them?
No, I moved to approve the minutes.
And we have a second from Mr. Best. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. So I think we would like the artist involved in our conversation on 2 and 3. So good with this, let's go ahead and Troy will mind. Would you mind going first, Troy? We're going to jump right to number 4 for you for a presentation on the Carl G. Brewer Center.
No, sir, thank you. You're good.
Good morning, Troy Hauptman, Director of Parks and Recreation. Before I get started, I just wanted to share with you about one of our employees, Larry Hoopner. He has retired. Friday was his last day. He has made a lot of presentations to this board, and we had a very fun going away party for him on Friday. But I just want to let you know that we really are going to miss him, and he did a lot of work here with you guys. So, but our engineering department is going to continue moving forward. We have Tim to help us out. Gary's got everything under control, so we'll keep moving forward. Right?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So in McAdams Park, we have a new, not a new building, but a newly named building, Carl G. Brewer Community Center. It used to be just called McAdams Recreation Center, but now it's named after our former mayor, Carl Brewer. And this building was actually built in 1958, and we are doing some major renovations in this area. We're looking at currently right now whether we're going to do a whole lot of renovations to the old building, but there's definitely going to be some new construction there. We're going to be adding on square footage because there's a lot of inadequacies there for all of our programming. So we're looking at about $10 million, and that $10 million came from a loan from Fidelity Bank. It's an interest-free loan from Fidelity Bank. And I will, after it's all done, I will be lobbying and hoping that it's a forgiveness loan. We don't have to pay it back, but we'll see. So we did a lot of feedback from the stakeholders and the users, and there was a need for additional education there. We want to look at more health and fitness options there, a lot more community programming, but more so than anything else, we just needed to update the building and add square footage. Keeping the old building, which is we're hoping is going to happen, and we'll have the old gym, but also a much larger, it'll still be one basketball court, but a larger gym to do more programming. So we did select a team, SFS Architecture. They're from the Kansas City area. They are doing the design, and there's a couple other folks that are part of this. Hank Moyers from Confluence. And we have some folks from Grenman Group, and we also have Scott Evans from MKEC working on this project. And so they've all been meeting and working with us on what we're going to be doing. Still, it's very fluid. We're not exactly sure how we're going to be putting everything together, but we have some issues and concerns because we're in flood zone, which has been a major sticking point for us. So we don't have a final design yet. We're still working on actually what and how everything's going to fit together. So SFS Architecture, they were selected. They've done a lot of work in the area as well as in recreation centers as well. So here's a list of some of their projects. They were interviewed with several other companies. I'm thinking that was probably about 4 or 5 months ago, probably a little bit longer than that. And we are just kicking off and ready to start working on this project. Locally, MKEC is another one of the partners doing a lot of work on this project, doing a lot of civil engineering, helping us with a lot of other engineering services. So we're looking at them to help us with a lot of the FEMA issues that we're dealing with. Like I mentioned, we're in the flood zone. So those are all things that they're helping us with as well. So there is $200,000 that's budgeted out of the $10 million for art, that 2%. 10% of that is actually for the consultant management going back to SFS. So we'll have 180,000 remaining for art. And we're in the process right now of selecting art consultant, and then artists for this project as well. Lindsay and Jenna are going to be part of that process, and we're going to have some of the community members as part of that process, and some of the family members. Well, they want to, since the name Mr. Brewer is on it, make sure that the family was involved as well. So quick little look at it. Up on the top right-hand side is the current building built in 1958. At the time in 1958, this was a great recreation center, but it doesn't really meet all the needs that we're looking at now for our programming. So we're looking at expanding. Current picture that you have there has the buildings actually attached, but we are actually looking at separating the buildings because they're in the flood zone. But the idea is to, like I keep saying, add square footage, add space so we can do more programs. And the footprint for the parking lot is going to look very similar to this, where we have a turnabout in the front of the new building. So those are all some of the things I think are still going to happen. But this is becoming a very, very active park with all the things that we've been doing with League 42, the upgrades that we did to the swimming pool. We're looking at upgrades for the tennis courts that are out there. This park is getting a lot of love, but also it's a lot of challenges as well to try to fit everything in there. That's not mine. Good thing, because I was going to have to tap dance. Therefore, when we go through the process of coming up with some more design work, we'll come back to design council with that. Also, we'll keep the design council in the loop as we select the art consultant and the artist. We're also going to be looking for additional dollars for art. And since this isn't part of the CIP process, that's why we're here. The money came from third party, Fidelity Bank. So we wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it, but I think we're going to be looking for some more art dollars. And there was some really keen interest of what the stakeholders, Councilmember Johnson, the family really wanted to see as far as art in the building to represent the African-American community. So just wanted to give you a quick update. Nothing else. If you have any questions or comments, let me know.
Any questions for Troy on the project?
Like some sort of approval, but it's just a update.
No, I just wanted to introduce the project because I'm sure you're going to be seeing and hearing about this a lot more in the future.
Yeah, and if I could provide some more information. So we went back and forth with Parks and Rec about this project because it was not presented to Design Council because it's not using traditional CIP. Design Council's allocation for the art is not actually being applied to this. However, per the art ordinance, any project, CIP or not, that is going to have art allocations still needs to be presented to the Design Council. So in theory, this is the first time you're hearing about this project because you didn't hear it as part of the CIP last year. So we're still following the guidelines set forward in the public art ordinance, despite it not being a CIP project. I make sure.
Yep, that sounds right. And the architectural firm is actually hiring the artist and the art consultant. So we wanted as part of the ordinance as well. So this is kind of interesting because this is kind of the very first program that we're actually doing from the very beginning, using the ordinance and all the full steps. Because in the past, when we had the ordinance put in place, we had other projects already in the loop going through the program. And so this is like the very first one right out of the gate that is going to apply everything that there is to apply from the ordinance.
Troy, he's looking at just consultant or, you know.
Yeah, we're going to be hiring an art consultant. We'll be doing a search relatively soon, and hopefully they get hired soon. And then with their work, hiring an artist. So they're part of the team from the very beginning.
Or will that selection be artists around the city of Wichita?
That's what the intent is. We really want some local artists to be part of this project. And primarily also have some kind of African-American tie, well, because of the strong connection with the American community with this building and the programming that's in this building.
What we're seeing here is kind of super early.
Very early, as I mentioned, I'm going to come over here and point some things out. This is all this hatched area is the original building, and this is what's basketball court, eating rooms, fitness room. It's actually going to be detached because it's in floodplain. And that way we have two buildings, really flexible with adding in all the parking. We're looking at adding a lot of spaces, but we want to save as many trees as we can. So that's one of the items that's in here, why it's kind of shaped the way it is. We're going to add parking that's going to support. This is the basketball court. One-car basketball courts. So we're going to add some more parking here to support that. But the idea is you come in, be able to loop around here and leave from the other way. During baseball season, during League 42 baseball season, it's really, really busy. It's always one of the things that I designed for peak time when you know that your only peak time is just a few months. So, but with the additional programming and the additional space, I think we'll have more activity. Rec centers. I'm going to call them rec centers now because we're going to have two independent buildings, it looks like. How does that answer?
Yeah, the reason why I ask is, obviously seeing their work over here, I really like their here. And I completely understand that that's, very early. I just hope that we see a little more of this gravitas that we're seeing in these images here being in the new building, because I would just hate for the existing structure to completely influence the new build. Like, I feel like it could have a little more grandiose nature to it.
Yeah, well, if you see this type of look right here, what we're looking for. And unfortunately, I think the old building is not going to have a whole lot of opportunity for a facelift. And eventually probably be phased out down the years, but we definitely wanted to still have both buildings and see how that works out for us.
It's a question for you, Lindsay. So this, when you're talking about the allocation, the $2,000 art budget, is that when we went through and we said the different amounts, or is that different funding?
So this is a different funded project. So would not have known that this project is happening otherwise. So in that big CIP list that we went through, this project was not part of it.
Oh, okay. So this money is, I thought we allocated funds in that list. We didn't?
Not for this project.
Oh, okay. All right.
$200,000 is coming out of the construction project. So
Okay.
$10 million that we have approved for this project, 2% is set aside for art.
Okay. I thought, I don't, maybe it was a different project. I thought we allocated funds for this, but we didn't.
Too. That's
Yeah.
of course, internally, we're like, wait a minute, where is this project sitting? So
Yeah.
staff worked really collaboratively behind the scenes to try to figure out what was the scope of this project as it relates to the ordinance.
Okay.
So this is in relation to the ordinance, step one of presenting as an informational opportunity to design council. So there's no action based on today, but as the project moves forward, the same designs will be presented similarly to the traditional scale. So as the art moves forward, it will be presented just as though it's a CIP project.
Correct. Yep.
Making sure we're all on the same page.
Is there an opportunity to allocate any funds from the CIP to this project or no?
Not for this current year because it's already set, but If the design council chose to do that in future years, they could. I mentioned that additional funding would be appreciated. It's a safe assessment, so that's something that could be in consideration for the 24 CIP. But we'll just have to kind of earmark that in the back of our heads, knowing that it's not in the CIP.
Okay,
We'll be looking for some donations from different areas of the city. And whether it's, 10,000 or 20,000, whatever it is, maybe there's a larger donation. We want to put a little bit more money into the art if we can find some donors.
Troy, what is the rough timeline for this project?
Well,
The best that you can.
sure. So this keeps being a moving target because I keep mentioning the floodplain, the flood zone has thrown a huge wrench in this. We were hoping that we would get design done by summer and start moving dirt sometime in the fall. This is probably going to be a 2-year project.
Fall of this year?
No, not open. It'll probably be a 2-year project from now.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of having the art reflected in the design instead of maybe just something part of the, just sat there.
Correct.
That's just my opinion. If you could get into the structure or something. This art element is part of the actual physical building.
That's why we're incorporating hiring the consultant now and the artist as soon as we can. See if there's those opportunities. But there has been a strong desire from the family as well as stakeholders of a few pieces of art that they want to see in there as well. And they're really looking at some murals that they really want to see. They really want to see some representation of the African-American community that is involved with politics, sports and activities. They really want to see those type of murals that represent those people in the building. But still early, so we got a lot of things to look at as far as options.
Tell Confluence we want lots of trees. I do. On
We-
the property.
We got some opportunities to plant a whole lot of trees in this park. So right next to this area, we are actually building a 4th baseball field. League 42 is actually building that 4th baseball field. And unfortunately, we had to remove about, I think it was 13 trees. But I think they're gonna have to replace those plus some additional trees. And so we'll have that in our, basically kind of like a reserve bank. And as this project gets moving forward, we want to find the best place to plant those trees. And so we'll have some abilities not only through the project, but also through some other funding to add more trees to this area.
All right. Thank you, Troy.
Yep.
Appreciate it. We're gonna go back to item 2 on the agenda, which is donation of the original kinetic sculpture by Arthur John.
Hi, I'm Jamie Nix with Wichita Public Library. Was surprised by a call from John Baltner a couple of months ago with a generous offer to create a custom mobile sculpture, kinetic sculpture at the Advanced Learning Library. We took a look at his work that's currently installed in Mark Arts and was at City Arts and is in Huston Library as well. Thinking about where in the library the space would be most appreciated by the community. And we've identified an area in the main stairwell. Installing the sculpture actually doesn't preclude us from adding additional art as identified in future conversations. Want to say something about your art?
Glad to be here. My name is John Waltner. I live in the city of Heston. And unlike the previous speaker, none of you know me at all. Let me tell you, first of all, just a little about myself. I spent my entire adult life in a couple of different areas, primarily education, elementary, high school, college level. I also spent 25 years as the mayor of the city of Heston. And during that time, became extremely interested in local government. So went to work with Harvey County in the administration office in the early 2000s. During that time, became very involved in some regional efforts. And some of you perhaps know a little bit about the Regional Economic Area Partnership. The acronym is REAP. The intent of that organization was to create collaboration among local governments in South Central Kansas. And during that time, came to know a number of people in the Wichita area. And we did a number of very interesting things. Ended up being county administrator in Harvey County, and then retired from that about 5 or 6 years ago. When I was in college, I took a art history class. I was a history major, took an art history class, and became absolutely enamored of the work of Alexander Calder. One of those things, my guess is many of you have had experiences like that in the past where you see something and something clicks. Now, in Wichita, you folks are the beneficiaries of an incredible work of Calder's, which hangs in what I originally knew as the Fourth National Bank building at Douglas and Broadway. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but it's a stunning piece, a massive piece, but absolutely commands your attention. I became really interested in mobile sculptures, but was married, had work, and a lot of other things that always seemed to take much more time than enabled me to really allowed me to devote time to what became an intense hobby, has since become practically an obsession. I'm sorry about that, but now that I'm retired, I'm able to do these things. So I no longer have the time to run around to art shows and things like that. We had a very successful art show at City Arts. Caitlin Waugh at City Arts was most supportive and allowed me to put things in the gift shop. And we had a great show there last summer, smaller pieces. But what I found is I really like making large pieces. And the problem with that is finding places to hang them. So I actually had the audacity to call Chloe Lang at Mark Arts. I don't know if any of you know her. And here again, somebody very supportive. She said, yeah, I have no idea what you make or what it looks like, but let's talk. So I went to City Arts and we found this space. The image to the left is in their lobby. And it's a great space, glass on two sides, and goes up about 22 feet, if not more. And it was a perfect place for something like this. And so I just told Chloe, look, let me make something. Absolutely no commitment on your part other than to let me hang it there, just to see what it looks like. You can have it, you can hang it there. And I want to know if, what the response would be. So that's the piece that you see on the left. And actually it's still hanging. And not long ago, Mark Arts sent me a letter asking if they could include it in their permanent collection, which I said, absolutely, just send me a letter saying I can treat it as a contribution and get some sort of a break on my taxes. I'm not about trying to sell these things. What I'm about is trying to make them and put them into spaces where they will be interesting, where people can enjoy them. And so that's what prompted my call and my visit then, people at your library with Jamie. I'm interested in the place because these things cannot go just anywhere. So as she's already told you, we looked at various places in the library, and that stairwell is a perfect place. It would be a very different mobile than what you see hanging there because the horizontal space is much more limited. There's great vertical space, but not a lot of horizontal space. And so there are some other challenges with this that I'm looking forward to trying to do something with. And I'm anticipating creating a piece that would hang roughly 15 feet from the ceiling, have maybe 120, 125, 30 elements to it that would be brightly colored to just simply command attention in that in that space. So it was that conversation that is leading to this today. Again, I want to make it very clear, I'm not asking the city of Wichita or the library group to fund this, just to allow us to put a piece there and see what the public reaction and other reaction is to it. And again, if people want to keep it at that point, just as with Mark Arts, perfectly willing to do that, because I like making these things. So that's pretty much what we're about. The colors that I anticipate using in that space, because it's a much darker space, the colors will be lighter, brighter in many ways than what you see there, just to brighten up that area and command attention as people start going up the stairway. So that's pretty much what I'm about as far as this project is concerned. If you have comments or questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Simply looking for approval.
That's what I was gonna say. I think Jamie's hoping that you're gonna do a motion to approve the piece for the library. Start with questions. On order.
I just want to say thank you for your generosity. I mean, it's a really big deal. It matters. And having the luxury of time being retired where you can just make things, I know that feels good. So I just want to say thank you for giving the gift of your art. That matters a lot. It's like a legacy. I love that legacy part of it. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I have a motion.
I can get a point of clarification before you make a motion. This is a recommendation for approval of design concept. Once it's completed, we'll then bring it back to accession it into the public art collection. That would be the next step. And once the design council, should they accept this into the public art collection, then we would submit it to city council for official accessioning to that. That's kind of the operating procedure of this project.
Thank you. Heather.
Make a motion to approve the concept.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Ella, any conversation on the motion? Say aye. Aye. Oppose? It's just unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, you get to stay there, I think. You get item 3 also, which is donation of the original bronze sculpture.
I think we were again approached, artists just coming from the sky for the library. We were approached by a local artist, Paul Foley, who has created a sculpture that's in process of being bronzed right now. It's in the style of Babs Malore, pardon me, I just blanked on the artist's name. He was a student of hers. And in lieu of putting this at the Advanced Learning Library, which is where mobile sculpture would go, we're proposing that if this is accepted and approved, that it would be installed at the Alford Branch Regional Library in South Wichita. That library branch has a significant entrance that this child and adult reading together would be really well suited for any.
Questions for Amy on the sculpture?
Is the sculpture, oh, I'm sorry.
Ella.
Is the sculpture going inside the library?
I believe it would be outdoors.
Do you know what the final dimensions will be of it?
6 by 4 by 4.
It's really, Yes.
If we can provide,
Yes.
if I may,
You-
a little bit more context, and Jana, please help me if I'm getting any of this wrong. This donation is a little bit different from the previous recommendation, as this would be accepting it in full into the collection. Next step would be city council. So because it's already in completion process, this would be to accept it into the collection. One point that you can find in your agenda packet is financial consideration that I don't think that the previous agenda item has in consideration for. So for this one, we would need to pour a concrete slab. Its maintenance would be a little bit different. We would add it into our annual maintenance plan for waxing bronze sculptures. So there is a financial component that we need to be mindful of as we look at our greater public art collection and how we're maintaining it with the limited budget that we have on an annual basis. So that is something to consider. We don't currently have a financial source identified for the concrete. Not necessarily be exorbitant, but just something to keep in mind. So we've made, staff has a recommendation of accepting or recommending you accept this once we have a financial source identified.
Tyler?
So as a point of clarification, I don't know who would take this. So those financial considerations, does that come out of the design, like the art budget that we allocate? Or is that a separate?
So it would be separate. It wouldn't be the budget that this body makes recommendations on is purely project-based like improvement. This would be out of our general public art maintenance fund that Jana and I oversee. So on an annual basis, that's about $75,000 to oversee our entire collection. The bulk of that goes to our conservation services, which is about $50,000 in contract. So any given year, we have roughly $25,000 set aside for maintenance. For just reference, currently we have a piece under restoration. It's also library related that will hit this body here soon. The Big Red sculpture is under restoration, and that's about a $15,000 project for one piece. So our money goes fast.
This,
Oh, go ahead.
is this, I mean, how much of a liability is accepting this into the collection? I mean, is that $500 a year? Is that $10,000 a year? Like,
It's unknown at this time, and that's purely based on Jana and I both being pretty green and not seeing a full budget cycle through to know what that is. I think the maintenance in terms of waxing, Jana, help me out, would be minimal because that large wax collection or a large bronze collection that's already to that. But we just want to be mindful of this as our projects like this are presented to this body. So we want to accept donations as they are presented, but we also want to be mindful of ramifications of accepting.
To take care of it in the future.
Ella?
Is offered one of the branches that's scheduled for renovations.
It is.
Okay, could this be part of the renovation project to fund the concrete pour from that instead of from maintenance budget?
It could be.
Okay,
That's something that we can definitely look at.
okay.
Saying the sculpture install at that library?
Right, so because Alfred has already been identified and they're gonna already have a budget for renovations at the library, potentially this installation, the installation cost of putting this in piece in could happen at that time if it's okay to wait until those funds are available, rather than taking from your maintenance budget, which is little, and like, not enough.
There's really two, I think, correct me, I think there's two things going on. They've got to find funding in City Hall to pour the concrete pad. They got multiple ways to do.
Okay.
And then there's after that, there's the maintenance of the sculpture after it gets set in place.
Okay.
And I think Lindsay's going to be consistent with us as we accept projects like this, that she does have to find a way to maintain this stuff. Not have adequate budget past years.
And I think I'm providing a robust amount of information because this is the first project of this nature that I've encountered in my tenure. So that it is purely in a goal to be consistent as these projects come up. So the staff report that you see as in memo form is essentially what we then present as the agenda report to City Council as well. So we want to make sure we're following our collection guidelines for the public art ordinance on every single project as they come in. So the recommendation is still to approve, but just with those caveats in mind.
I'm hesitant to approve this without fully knowing where the funding is gonna come from, right? I like that, your suggestion of this project coming up, but this says that they want it installed at the advance, right? Is that correct?
I think that's where it initially, the idea was presented and assessing all of our branch grounds and possibilities. Alfred is where the library is that it.
I
would
got,
be.
okay, thank you. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that idea much more of, since that library is already scheduled on the docket to get funding for art, and it makes sense that funding could get it through there. Oh, bronze, that's a lot of money to donate a giant bronze sculpture. It's underwritten by, I'm just curious, it's just underwritten by somebody,
I believe so.
the artist?
It's a very comparative story to the previous agenda item. The artist approached us and had this project in the works. Felt that it would be at a library.
Yeah, that's.
Hard to look at.
It's a luxury vehicle.
You know,
Yeah. No,
And I feel very confident that we can find a funding source to lay the concrete pad that, again, I don't think it's going to be exorbitant amount, that we can definitely absorb it, some scope of budget. We definitely don't want to take away from Alfred's budget, as we look at additional art that goes into the space. So I'm confident we can find a source, but it is something.
You have the same kind of issues with the mobile sculpture though, right? Of maintenance and all that and installation. Maybe they're like not relatively the same cost or anything, but.
Installation costs for the mobile sculpture will be much less
Right.
than pouring a concrete slab.
But you still have maintenance. And so, I mean, those same issues, which we didn't discuss then, we are now discussing on this one, aren't any less of a.
The maintenance is slightly different on the mobile sculpture as well. It won't be their annual maintenance. Is any waxing. A little bit less.
Tyler.
It seems like kind of an obvious question, but I feel like I should ask. The library does want this.
We took this, both art pieces to our planning and operations committee, subcommittee of the library. And they were wanting us to do a little research because we have short-term memory about the art at the Advanced Learning Library. We got caught up on all of that. And then just in seeing these, they did recommend, which received and to bring it here. Your decision.
All right, so do we have a motion? Like further discussion?
so I moved to just approve this.
Second. Second. Seconded by Matt. Any discussion on the motion?
It's not confusing, is it?
We got it.
Motion by Matt, second by Matt. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to now go to item number 5, design council appointee to the council board. I don't know how that's always had a design council. I can remember the Ella did this last year. Little breakdown in communication, but nothing we can't fix this year.
Wonderful.
So we are recommending Ella have a second year to do that for the design council. For a motion to a day to approve that, and I will put it up to discussion first if the board would like to have discussion about that. If not, I will take a motion to approve Ella.
Move.
Alrighty, Greg, motion by Greg, second by Susan. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, passes unanimously. Item 6, City of Wichita Public Art Assessments, Maintenance and Documentation Report by Past Matters. just turn it over to you. Let's explain.
Yeah, so I wanted to make all of you aware that about a week ago, we received the assessment and maintenance and documentation report from Deborah Rodriguez, who is the principal of Past Matters Inc., the conservator that we've had under contract. I believe she's in her third year now. And I just, to let you know, just a brief overview. And then we will be thoroughly reviewing her recommendations and the status of the collection and putting together maintenance plan and budget for the next one too. Because of COVID, the collection had not been maintained since 2019. So as you can imagine, number of the bronzes, all of the bronzes were in desperate need of maintenance and painting and waxing. And I just threw one example for you to see the difference, the before and after. Deborah cleaned and waxed 33 works in the collection this fall, this past September, October. She also inspected, did a closer inspection of 15 works, and she ranked those works by low, medium, or high priority. 3 were ranked low, 6 medium, and 6 high priority. So those will be of concern for us as we're looking at maintenance needs, and treatment needs over the next several years. She made recommendations also that need to be reviewed by the city staff due to existing or ongoing conditions altered. Again, ranking them low, medium, and high. 9 received a low priority, 9 a medium, and 10 high. So we have a number of priorities for us on the maintenance of the public collection in the near future. But we just wanted to make you guys aware of that. And a copy of the full report is quite substantial. Is available. Just shoot me an email and send it over to you.
Good question, just for my information, as I'm not an expert in bronze. Qualified to ask questions, hardly. But if I'm looking at these images, am I right in that the images on the right are before and the ones on the left are after? Or am I wrong about that?
Exact opposite.
Is it, I thought maybe there's a shine to it. Help me out understand that, just for my education.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
Because bronzes is shiny, like from people touching them and such, and I don't know, but
Let's zoom in. So if you look at this, you can see all of the dirt, dust, and also corrosion that's happening with Tina when that sacrificial wax coating wears away due to the environment. When bronzes are maintained, are cleaned and waxed annually or biannually, that corrosion, there's significantly smaller chance of that corrosion. And so going forward, each bronze in the collection will be maintained.
Basically,
Can you see the difference now, Matt?
you want that kind of dull, darker finish. So, because that means dust and oil
Yeah, with the,
left.
clearly I need better glasses, or just glasses in general. Thank you for the explanation.
well, you're welcome.
So we
They're not great images in the slide.
have, so you, obviously, you're saying there's lots of high priorities. Does the city have sufficient budget?
That's something, we've only had the report about a week, so we are still internally really digesting it. Once we've really identified an action plan, we'll be bringing that to this body as an FYI. We will be working with the budget office to figure out what we can do moving forward and make recommendations accordingly. We know we won't be able to tackle everything all at once, but we at least want to hit these high priority items and make a plan for moving forward. And of the handful of works that we specifically asked her to take a look at, the Menneson Bridge was one of them, just as an FYI. We know that that's a giant project. The public art maintenance budget will not be touching that project because that's just a very significant project with a lot of different players in mind. So we had her come and give an expert recommendation on what to do with it. So
And on that note, I forgot to mention, she also did a more detailed assessment on the heritage pole at the Mid-America Hall Indian Museum. It is a high priority on treatment. So I provided that to April at Maine, and we will be looking to accomplish that. I mean,
moving forward, yeah.
Yeah.
So we definitely
Moving
are
forward.
working for a regular maintenance plan 1, but then a conservation plan 2 for bigger projects. As
Any other questions?
The $50,000 out of the 75 goes to,
it goes towards the conservation contract itself. So
you got 25,000 for maintenance.
regular.
And I guess my question is, I know we get funding for art. Is there, I mean, maybe there's other avenues you can pull budget out of, but is that something?
Question. So as we interpret the ordinance a little bit more, there is an opportunity within the budget that you allocate to have maintenance attached to it. And that's something we want to be very mindful of as we're growing. Collection, the CIP that has been approved for this 10 years has about $10 million in public art and acquisition. We need to make very mindful motion and how we're maintaining that acquisition as we're building. So it's going to be a balancing act. And again, that's Jana and I both being green and figuring out a realistic plan on how to move forward. Because we definitely don't want to stop the acquisitions by any means, but we want to be very responsible in taking care of what we have and having a plan on what we're requiring. Hopefully that addresses.
I would just push to get money from other sources if you can, but if not, I think that's probably something we can think about.
And it's also a holistic process of working with the various departments, because some of it is going to be art funding, but then some of it might fall under a department budget as it pertains. So the library projects might fall under a library, the parks projects might fall. We also have a significant, but we're looking internally in how we're cataloging collection as well. There's a lot of design and aesthetic overlay projects that aren't necessarily like our collection pieces. So we're trying to disseminate how are we looking at that. So decorative brickwork in a street, are we maintaining that the same way we maintain public art, or would that fall under roads and streets? So we've got a lot of work to do internally to kind of really break down and assess. And if any design council members are interested in being a part of this, we would welcome your feedback and support. But we're really doing some internal digestion first. Once we have recommendations, we absolutely. And the collection report itself is available upon request. It's a good couple hundred pages, and I have not read it myself yet, so, but it is available upon request.
Any other questions for? All right, is there anything on the as may arise?
I had a question. Ella mentioned that the Alfred branch was, library was designated for a remodel. Is there like a list? Is that like a list that I've missed? Like,
Yes, we have a list of books that allocated funds to.
I mean, there's not one just specifically about libraries. You're saying it's just in that CIP.
Yes.
And we can send a refresher as we're starting a new year for what projects were over approved by the year. The page that looks something like this that you would have received last July. We can definitely send that out to the group as a refresher if that would be helpful.
I wasn't sure if there was like a separate, like, something, just the libraries or something. But I'll dig through that.
There is a library specific one, but as it relates to this body, we have a public art. The library has its own, parks has its own, streets has.
Anything else on the as may rise?
If I may, sorry to bombard this meeting
All
constantly.
right.
I just acknowledge that we actually have a full body. This is a great way to start the year to have all members present. So just a token of gratitude from staff. Thank you for starting off your year. Please mark your calendars for the full year. We do anticipate that we'll have a meeting every month. We'll be proactive in letting anything canceled. But we're excited to start here.
Clearly, we all have the same New Year's resolution.
I can't tell you the last time we've had all members here, so it is a great way to start. With that, I'm going to throw out a motion to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor?
Hey.
Thank you all.